Hello and good afternoon to everybody. Welcome to this week's Thoughtful Tales. It's really lovely to be here with you all. It's really cold at my house today. In fact, it's actually snowing. I wonder whether any of you have got snow where you are today. So while we're welcoming everyone, I'm just going to take a minute just to let everybody arrive. We'll do what we always do at the beginning. If you want to tell me who you are, and perhaps how old you are and where you're calling from today. So as I said, today it's really cold. It's snowing in my house. I live in Totnes in Devon, and there's a little bit of snow, not that much, but enough to make a snowman today. So it's cold with me. But tell me in the chat box, if you know how to use the chat box, you can have a go at telling me who you are and where you're calling from. And also you can tell me if it's snowing. Also freezing with Ella in Leeds. Let's have a look to see who's here. So we've got Ella in Leeds. We've got Bo, who's 6 in Birmingham. Nice to see you, Bo. And I recognise your name, so you've been here before. We've got my friend Jo, who's calling. She's going to be reading our story today. So hi, Jo.
Hi.
Who else have we got today? We've got some familiar names in the box. I can see Lindsay's here. I recognise Lindsay from last time. Now we're just going to wait a couple more minutes for everybody to arrive. So as always with our Thoughtful Tales, you can follow on the screen. So when Jo starts reading, she's also going to show you the story and you can read along with her. Or you can do what I love to do when I hear stories, which is actually just to close my eyes and listen. And you can use your imagination and think about what the story looks like in your own mind. So we've got a couple more people here who are saying hello. You don't have to say hello, but it's nice if you do. We've got Olivia and Natalie who are calling from Oxford. We've got Jason who is calling from Cardiff. It's lovely to see you here. And we've got a couple more people I can see who are with us. It's nice to have you here. Lindsay is Bo's mum. I don't know how to change the name. Okay, thank you, Bo. That's simple. Yeah, we don't need to change mum's name. I will remember to call you Bo for next time. Thank you. We've got Reef from Ormskirk, and Reef is 9. Lovely to see you here, Reef. And have I missed anybody so far? Okay, I'll say hello. If any more people, I'll say hello at the end because I'm going to hand straight over to Jo. We've got quite a long story today. She's going to read you a story all about Fox. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Jo for today's story. So enjoy.
Thank you, Rachel. And as always, I am excited to have so many people joining us. Slight technical hitch. I'm trying to share my screen.
Okay, let me see, Jo. Maybe that I have not let you do that.
Not yet, you haven't.
Here we go. Okay, no snow with Bo. Okay, there's a little rhyme and a bit of disappointment. Sorry, Bo. I had such a little amount of snow. It only lasted until lunchtime, but I made a snowman the size of a teacup. So there wasn't very much snow here, but
beautiful it was, though. Beautiful it was, even though it was incy wincy. It was gorgeous. So welcome to this afternoon's Thoughtful Tale. Shall we see what Fox has been up to and where she's off to on her journey? It was Saturday night and time for the weekly woodland dance. Fox always looked forward to Saturdays as she just loved to dance. Her very favourite dance was one that all the folk from the Hollow knew. Apologies. It was called Jiving Paws. Fox knew that everybody would be dancing the Jiving Paws dance this evening as it was everybody's favourite dance. When Fox arrived into the clearing, all of her friends from the Hollow were there, dancing happily to their favourite tunes. The full moon was shining down like a disco ball and the music was turned up really loudly. Fox bounded into the middle of the dance floor and joined the rest of her friends in 5 rounds of Jiving Paws without stopping. They danced and danced and danced all night long, everybody shaking their paws and grinning from ear to ear. Eventually, it was time for bed. Exhausted from all of their dancing, the animals headed back home to the Hollow to get some sleep. But as they got closer to home, they noticed a strange smell and started to see clouds of black smoke billowing up into the air. They hurried back to their neighbourhood as fast as they could and couldn't quite believe what they saw when they arrived. Instead of the cosy copse of trees where they all used to live, there was just a bare, empty space. All of the trees had disappeared, and all that remained in the Hollow were smouldering piles of ash. Every single tree and every single home had been burnt to a cinder. The creatures stood in shock and disbelief. Everything had gone, and their homes and their belongings had all burned to the ground. Fox raced across the hollow to her home and quickly burrowed back into her den. Its contents had been destroyed, just like the rest of the hollow. But as she was turning to leave, she caught sight of a few treasures lying in the charred remains, a picture of her family and her lucky pebble. That was all that was left of home. She quickly put them into a bag and headed back out to the hollow where the rest of the creatures were gathered. Fox noticed that the fire was still burning nearby and seemed to be spreading. It was not safe for them to stay, and so they agreed to leave quickly and head off to find somewhere safe to rest and a new place to call home. All of the creatures hurriedly packed up anything that they could find in the smoky remains and prepared themselves for a long journey to find somewhere new to live. They said one final goodbye to the hollow and headed swiftly off out of the forest in search of a new home. The hollow folk walked for hours and hours, trying to get far enough away from the raging fire until it was safe for them to stop. Eventually, they heard a noise in the distance. It sounded like the sound of singing and laughter and made them feel hopeful. Maybe this was a safe place to rest. Fox and her best friend Badger ran on ahead to take a look, but as they got closer, they noticed a large sign hanging on a tree. "Keep out. No strangers allowed here." Fox and Badger looked at each other, feeling anxious. They were so very tired and so very hungry and desperately wanted to stop, but they both agreed that they would not be welcome in that place. And so they returned to the rest of the group and carried on walking. One whole night and one whole day passed before they reached a beautiful looking copse. It seemed very familiar as it reminded them of their old home. As they got closer and closer, feeling hopeful that they might have finally found somewhere safe to live, a figure appeared in the distance, its large eyes shining in the twilight. As the figure got closer and closer, they started to make out its long, muscular legs, its large, strong body, and its two majestic-looking antlers. It was a stag. As he approached the band of weary travellers, he stood up very tall, stuck out his jaw, and grunted loudly at the group. Keep walking, we don't have room for newcomers to stay here. Keep walking, you're not welcome here." Fox's eyes filled with tears when she realised that once again they were not welcome and they were still not safe. Resigned and rejected, she lowered her head and joined the rest of the weary group as they turned the other way and kept on walking. After several more hours of exhausted walking, the hollow folk climbed a really, really steep hill. When they eventually got to the top, they noticed a tiny little light shining in the distance. As they got closer, they started to hear the sound of music and singing. There was a party happening in a clearing in the middle of the woods. The creatures hesitated for a moment, uncertain as to whether to keep going, as they didn't want to feel unwelcome again. Suddenly, a figure popped out from behind a bush. It was Hare. "Greetings, friends," said Hare hoppily. "You must be here for the party. Come and join us. The dancing is just about to start." Fox stepped forward nervously and said, "Actually, we don't live here. We've come from far away. Are you sure we're welcome here?" "Of course. We love welcoming new people into our home. Where are you all from?" "We used to live far and away, down in the hollow. However, we don't have a home anymore. Our houses were destroyed in a great fire, and we're searching for a new place to live," said Fox, feeling the tears well up in her eyes as she remembered the homes they'd all lost. "That's so awful," said Hare, looking kindly at the group. "I couldn't bear to lose my home. It would make me feel so sad." And then Hare thought for a moment, her whiskers twitching. "Maybe you could live here with us," she said with a smile, looking around the group of weary travellers. "We'd love to welcome you to join our hilltop community." Fox couldn't quite believe what she was hearing. After all of the unwelcoming encounters they had had, it was hard to believe that they might have finally found somewhere to stay. She looked around the group and saw smiles on everyone's faces. "Come and have some food before the dancing starts. You must be hungry, and there's plenty for us all to share," said Hare, hopping her way to the top of the hill to join the rest of the hilltop folk. the weary group followed Hare into the clearing and were so surprised by what they saw. It was a copse just like where they used to live. Yet when they looked more closely, they realised that everything was somehow slightly different to where they were used to. The food looked rather strange, the drinks were unusual, and the music just didn't sound like anything they'd ever heard before. Fox started to wonder whether it was a good idea to stay. Maybe they didn't belong here after all. Whilst the tired animals were eating and drinking, Hare hopped over to some of her friends that also lived in the clearing to tell them about the new visitors and to ask if it was okay for them to stay. The animals looked at each other. Was there enough space for them to stay? Would there be enough food to share around? Would there be enough places for them to build their homes? They talked quietly together, some of the animals muttering quietly to one another. Suddenly, 3 of them stepped forward. "I am happy to let them stay," said Squirrel, "but I'm a little unsure because they don't look like us." "They don't sound like us either," said Woodpecker, also looking a little anxious. "And I bet they don't move like us," hissed Snake, uncoiling his long body from around the tree. "That's okay," said Hare. "We don't all need to be the same. I don't look like you, Squirrel, and I don't sound like you, Woodpecker, and I don't move like you, Snake, but we all live well together, don't we?" And with that, Hare hopped towards the dance floor and signalled for the music to start and the dancing to begin. As soon as the music started playing, Fox's, no hitch. Please excuse me, I'm trying to find the right page.
Do you want me to keep reading, Joe, while you find it?
So have you got the right page?
I've got the book in front of me.
Ah, bless you, thank you.
I'll keep reading while
Yeah,
you
go for it.
while you find it. Technical hitch always happens. With that, Hare hopped towards the dance floor and signalled for the music to start and the dancing to begin. As soon as the music started playing, Fox's feet started tapping and her paws started twitching. She just couldn't resist. Dancing was her very favourite thing to do, no matter where she was. Pretty soon, the dance floor was buzzing. The hollow folk started waving their paws in the air, dancing in union to the jiving paws routine that they all knew and loved. As Fox looked around the dance floor, she noticed that the hilltop folk were all happily stomping their feet on the ground in unison, but not moving their paws at all. Fox looked at Hare and said, "I've never seen anyone dance like you before. That looks fun." At the same time, Hare looked at Fox and said, "Well, I've never seen anyone dance like you before. That looks fun." And so Fox started stomping her feet to the music, just like the hilltop folk. And Hare started waving her paws to the beat, just like the hollow folk. And pretty soon, all of the hollow folk had joined Fox in the stomping dance. And all of the hilltop folk had joined Hare in the jiving paws, and everyone was grinning from ear to ear. Back to you, Joe.
"This is great," hissed Snake, swirling his coils around and around. "What a dance!" chirped Woodpecker, flapping his wings to the beat. "What funky moves!" squealed Squirrel, jiving happily to the music. Nowadays, on the hilltop, Saturdays are the most exciting days of the week because it's the day that everyone comes together to dance. The dancing always begins with the stomping strut, the local dance of the hilltop folk, and then moves on to the jiving paws, which the hollow folk soon taught to all of the locals. And then everyone comes together for their very favourite dance, which is when they all stomp their feet and wave their paws at the same time, with everyone dancing together. Thank you, Rachel, for stepping into the breach there in this moment of technical wizardry mess up. Well, that was quite a story, wasn't it? I'm so pleased that Fox and her friends found a new place to call home with some friendly animals who were so welcoming. Now, what's your response to the story? What do you think is the message that we're taking away about what happened to Fox and all her other animal friends from the Hollow? Maybe you could type it into the chat box or ask a grown-up to help if you need to. Let's see what you think. So poor old Fox had to leave her home for no fault of her own. And on her journey, she met some animals who weren't very kind. So it's really nice to see some responses here about messages of being kind and kindness and sharing your home if other people need it. Well, quite. It's nice to be welcoming, isn't it? And Fox and her friends didn't encounter much in the way of that on their way. There's some lovely ideas coming in here, so thank you. Now, as they travelled from the hollow to find a new place to live, Fox and her friends didn't encounter a very kind welcome, did they? First, they saw a sign, do you remember, that said, "Keep out, no strangers allowed." And then they met a stag, didn't they, who told them quite firmly to keep on walking. Now, did you think about the reasons that those animals might have had for not wanting Fox and her friends to join them, do you think? I wonder what reasons they might have had for not wanting to allow the other animals to stay with them. Have a think. That's right. Maybe they thought they were outsiders. Maybe they were concerned they wouldn't be very nice to them. Maybe it was because they were different. Maybe they thought they'd take up too much space. That's a really interesting answer, isn't it? Maybe they weren't willing to share their resources. Maybe they didn't have as much food as they thought would be enough to go round. They obviously had their reasons, didn't they? Perhaps they were just being grumpy. Yes, well, of course, they might have been scared of them. That's a nice one. Well, it's not a nice one, is it? But maybe they were looking at the animal kingdom. Maybe they were worried about being eaten. Maybe they thought they were predators. But how did that make Fox feel? Poor Fox. Not only had she and her animal friends lost their home, they were also being treated pretty badly by others, weren't they? Now, I wonder if you remember that even when Hare is really welcoming to Fox and her friends to join them at the hilltop, some of the other hilltop animals are a little unsure, aren't they? Squirrel notices that they don't look the same. Woodpecker notices that they don't sound the same. And Snake notices that they don't move in the same way. But do you remember what Hare says? That's right. That we don't always all have to look the same or be the same to live together happily, do we? And that's so true, isn't it? And the wonderful thing that happens when the hilltop crew and the hollow animals come together is that both of the animals benefit, don't they, from having even more super funky dance moves on the Saturday nights. Dance moves that they wouldn't have known about if they hadn't been willing to welcome the strangers into their home and their community. Perhaps you've had experiences of meeting somebody who seemed different to you and who you welcomed into your community or your friendship group. Do you want to take a few moments to reflect on our story today and maybe share your final thoughts with anybody else who's listening? That would be lovely. Yes, some nice ideas coming in here. Thank you. Yeah, we don't all have to be the same, do we? Because of course we're not all the same. And it's really important to welcome other people who we feel might be different. That's fine. And I've just had a really lovely example from a real world experience. Somebody here says that a new girl started at her school and they welcomed her. And that's just beautiful, isn't it? Because starting at a new school can be quite daunting. So if you opened your arms, both metaphorically and literally, to welcome somebody new, that's a really beautiful thing you did there. Well done. And of course, we can learn so many things from people who are different to us, can't we? Just as those animals shared their different dances and their Saturday nights became even more exciting and adventurous as they shared those dancing styles. So of course, we stand to learn from people who are different to us too. Are there any more final thoughts to share with us about our story? I think somebody's sharing an idea about a dog here, but it's a bit unfinished. So can you give me a little bit more information? I wonder if you mean that perhaps sharing our homes with different animals and welcoming them into our communities is another example of how we can learn from other creatures. Maybe that's yeah, exactly, that's what you mean. Yeah, exactly. Animals can be our friends, can't we? I've got a very naughty dog downstairs who obviously is a different species from me, but she brings so much joy to my life, and I hope that we've given her a nice home to live in. There's some lovely thoughts here, thank you. I'm loving these examples I'm seeing as well of people who are welcoming people into their school communities. With somebody here telling us about a new boy into a class and being welcoming to that person. That's lovely. It's a beautiful thing. Thank you for sharing. Now, of course, we can't really go on many journeys at the moment. Perhaps our takeaway from today's story is to remember to be welcoming to people who we meet who might feel different from us, and remember that kindness is always one of the most important things we can do, and be open and welcoming to what other people might bring into our lives, and to recognize that there's a huge benefit from what we can all share. Rachel, have you got anything to add to our lovely discussion?
Yeah, this is really lovely. I think one of the questions I was going to ask if I was given a chance was, do you remember what the reason was that Fox and her friends had to leave their home? What happened that made them have to leave their home in the first place? We've got Reef is saying it wasn't his fault. It was a fire. Well done, Bo. Yeah, and so it wasn't anything that was their fault. They didn't want to leave their home and go on a long journey. They had to leave their home because there was a fire. And oftentimes we might come across many people who leave their homes not because they want to, but because they have to. And we may have got people in our own schools who've come from different countries or different places in the world who've had to leave home for reasons that wasn't a choice. And I think it's really lovely that all of you are showing how we can be really welcoming when we have people come to stay and to live in our communities who perhaps don't come from those areas, and maybe who have different food or different music or different ways of being, and we can all learn together and be really welcoming. And that sounds like you already do that, Bo, so well done. Okay, shall we finish, Jo?
Yes, I think so. We've got another story coming up soon, though, haven't we?
We have indeed. So next week we've got our friend Carolina who's going to be with us, and she's going to be reading a story called Hedgehog's Fair Play Day. So you're going to learn all about the day that Hedgehog learns to play fair, which is something that's quite hard for some of us to do. I'm really excited to announce that it's snowing with Bo. So that's great, a great time for us to end. So I hope you keep warm and make sure you I hope you get a chance to build a snowman before it disappears. Thank you all for coming. Thank you so much to Jo for reading today's story. And don't forget, we do record all of the stories. So if you want to listen to them again, or if you miss any of them, you can find them on the ThoughtBox website by looking for Thoughtful Tales. So see you again next week. And thank you again, Jo, for reading today's story.
Bye.
Bye.